Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Hayward. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Today we have Dawn Bloomer, who is a business strategist, consultant, and certified exit planning advisor. Dawn, in a previous life, was a vet who specialized in helping attain peak performance for horses. She is the founder of The Productive Pressure, a philosophy and method that balances the drive for success with a safeguard against burnout. Dawn has also designed a practice which is called the Practice Freedom Accelerator, which empowers her clients to take a step back to free up space to pursue passions and increase value for future transitions. She specializes in helping clients in business strategy, exit planning, self-leadership, and working life integration. Dawn also lives in Los Angeles at the moment. So if you're enjoying this show, please can you subscribe to the podcast on all the different platforms that you have, so therefore you don't miss an episode. Thank you for joining me today, Dawn. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be here. We've already had a nice little chat, so I think this is going to be fun.
We're going to have a lot of fun here. And so we're going to be prioritizing about business growth. So I know you were a vet before, and you just said just before we hit record that you bought in and then built a business that way. But I'm really going to want to focus most of our conversation on your current business as a consultant and how you're growing that business. But as a legacy from the past show, the podcast was called Absolute Business Mindset. What does a business mindset mean to you?
That's a great question. I would say that for me, a business mindset is about growth, because for me, a business is about supporting your life and how it can give you all the things that you want in the rest of your life, not just the business itself.
Interesting. That's a slightly different answer. And that's interesting because we, as a business owner, as often you get so consumed by the business that other things outside, and I've spoken to people before that have said family has suffered and sort of other interests has suffered as well. And I do think there is a necessity. I've got young kids, 7 and 9, 2 girls, to be able to prioritize them as well and creating a kind of work-life balance. We're going to ask you a question about work-life balance because I actually don't think it exists. I don't
either. I think it's total BS.
Okay.
I think it's total BS. I abhor the words work-life balance, because to me, balance sounds like a seesaw, right? Or a teeter-totter. Yeah. And you're supposed to have work on one side and life on the other side. When did work become half of your life? Even if you spend, some people spend, it seems, more than half of their time doing it. You need to be integrating all of your other interests and all the other important domains in your life into it. So sorry, I probably got ahead of your question.
No, that's absolutely fine.
You started it.
A question that I ask about people's journey and people's background. So tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Oh, I would say that growing up, I moved around a fair bit. For a long time, we didn't live anywhere for more than a few years at a time. My dad was a banker, and every time he got a promotion, we would move. And so when I was 6, we moved to England. When I was 9, we moved back to Canada, where I'm from originally. From there, we were there for a couple of years, and then we moved to New York for 5 years, and then back to Canada. And I think that really played into the fact that I'm very adaptable. I am good at meeting new people, and I'm not afraid of change. I actually embrace change. I like it. I have a little bit of the shiny object syndrome, probably because I moved around a lot, learned a lot of different things. I'd say on the downside, the challenge for me was longer term, staying in touch with people over the longer term. Of course, I'm of a vintage where we didn't have email and text messages, and long distance calls were expensive. And so I think that's one of those things that I never got in a good habit of doing. I never got in a good habit of writing letters. And so I think that would be the flip side of that. And that sort of seeps into business as well, I think, over time.
Yeah. We're actually going to fast forward through the veterinary area because I want to focus on your current business now. But briefly, what was the driving force for the change from veterinary into becoming a consultant?
Well, I had spent quite a bit of time in the latter part of my career learning more about business management, getting my MBA, and then we merged our business, grew that group of businesses that we merged with, and then sold that. And through all that, I realized that now I was really excited about business. And I had known for a while that I wanted to get into consulting. And so it was a great opportunity to make a shift.
Absolutely. And one of the programs that you run, or one of the ideas you have, is productive pressure. And I love this idea because the sort of strapline after is you put enough pressure to go fast, but not too much so you avoid an injury. So
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that thought process, because the whole idea of burnout and getting tired of your business is something real and something a lot of people suffer with. How do you create that for your clients, that productive pressure?
So I dealt with burnout a lot throughout my career. Off and on, it felt like a bit of a roller coaster ride. And that's why I'm really passionate about this concept. And I think that stress gets a bit of a bad rep. I think it's easy for us to say, oh, I'm under a lot of stress, and oh, it's too much stress. But let's be real. If you didn't have any stress or any pressure in your life, you wouldn't accomplish anything. So for most high achievers, and I would lump most business owners into the high achievers bracket because we're high achievers by default. The challenge is more not so much getting you going as it is getting you to take a pause and learning that you actually need to, whatever you want to call it, put the oxygen mask on first. But at the same time, you need the pressure. So I love putting things in containers to an extent. I love the idea of there are all sorts of tactics and tricks, but it's wrapping your mind around the fact. The first step to me is wrapping your mind around the fact that if you're going to lead other people, which you need to do as a business owner, then you need to lead yourself first. And so that means you have to be prepared, even when it's hard, to take care of yourself first. And as a woman and a mom, this was a very difficult lesson for me to learn because I'm wired to look after everyone else first. I'm not a martyr, but it's just how I'm wired. I'm just wired to make sure everyone else is taken care of first. And I think business owners, our business is a lot like our kids, right? We're wired to take care of that before we take care of ourselves.
So let's approach this work-life balance idea. So the reason why I came up with this theory was I worked in corporate for 12 years and progressed and whatever, then left, became an entrepreneur, business owner myself. But when one of the early conversations, I had young children at the time, and he said, it is a constant equalizing where you are when it comes to work and family life, or work and outside of work. And he said, you're looking to progress your career, you're putting the accelerator on the business or on what you're trying to achieve in the corporate. Your family drop down a few levels. Now, at certain times, it might be newborn or whatever. You prioritize your family, and therefore they are more important than your work. So your work, you're not looking for the next promotion. You're saying, I'll sit tight for a year and I'll prioritize my family. And he said it is a constant equation that you're working out, which is more important at the moment because of X, Y, and Z that make you do that. And therefore, this idea that everyone can create this idea of having this equation where everyone is happy, you're happy, your family's happy, your business is happy. What's your thoughts on work-life balance?
Yeah, so I would take it even a step further. I think that's a great starting point. But again, you're still only talking about work and family, or work and life. To me, as a business owner, and it's a little bit different if you're in a career, I feel, or it can be, because it can be easier to shut it off. But I think when you're a business owner, especially when you're building a business, in the beginning, you are going to put a lot more priority on that. And that's why it's really important to be aware and mindful of what all the other parts of your life are that are being ignored or aren't getting as much attention as they need, because otherwise you might not realize it until it's too late. It's fine to say, right now I have to focus on my business. And then what are you doing about the rest of that stuff? So one of the exercises that I love that's been out there for a long time is the Wheel of Life. where you pick six or so domains in your life and you rate them on a scale of 0 to 10. What is it that you really are focusing on right now? And it's not about judging yourself. It's about being aware. Well, I'm focusing right now on growing my business. And so I happen to be married and I have kids, and I also like to stay healthy and fit and all these things. So how am I going to apportion my energy? I think it's energy even more so than time, because here's the thing, like even with kids, like my kids are 16 and 18 now, but even my kids, when they were little, it's not about how much time they have with you. It's about how present you are when you're there in the moment, because they're little self-absorbed little beings. All they want to know is that when they're ready for you, that you're in the game.
Yeah.
So there are so many ways that we can make it work, and still, it doesn't mean that it's not going to feel crazy a lot of the time and you're not going to drop some balls here and there. But if we take a more deliberate approach to how we're going about it, that's where we really can have it all. We just can't have it all at the same time. We can have it all in different amounts at the same time.
Okay, next thing I wanted to ask you, what are the strategies that you employ to keep your customers and get referrals from your clients?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're an online business owner and you want to learn what's working right now to generate leads, grow your following, and get paying clients and customers, then be sure to check out the Digital Trailblazer podcast. Each week, we feature online business owners just like you who are launching and scaling their businesses, and we reveal exactly what they're doing to rise above the competition to build a successful, profitable online business. And what's really unique about the Digital Trailblazer podcast is that you're going to learn these strategies directly from the business owners who are putting them into action and getting results. So head over to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, or just head over to digitaltrailblazer.com for links to all of our episodes.
Oh, that's been an interesting journey for me, because I went from a business where we had more work than we knew what to do with, and we had only ever had work through referrals. Word of mouth was the only way we got business. Didn't have a website, no marketing. And so when I started my consulting practice, I realized that I had to learn a lot about all the things that I wasn't really very fond of, like social media and internet marketing and websites and all sorts of stuff. And so that's been a really challenging journey for me, because I've had to be willing to do things like this, like get on podcasts and post on social media, because if people don't know me and they don't know how I think and they don't get a sense of how I am, they don't know whether they'll like working with me or not. So I've spent a lot of time investing in trying to build my network on LinkedIn. I try and provide a lot of value on LinkedIn by just putting my thoughts out there. I guess it depends on the eyes of the beholder whether or not it's valuable, but the people that can that resonate with the things that I'm talking about will be a good fit for me. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time on that, and that's been a struggle for me. I didn't post on Facebook. I'm a lurker. So that's been a real journey for me. It's a whole new world trying to be heard in a sea of noise.
Yeah.
And as far as from a referral basis, that for me is a little easier. I feel that's where I still get most of my business through referrals, through word of mouth. I think because it's just a lot easier to hire someone as an advisor if someone else has worked with them and knows, likes, and trusts them.
So
it's not like a product where you can just put it out there and some people will try it and it speaks for itself. It's one of those things where it's more of an experience where you need to have had the experience to know what its value is.
So there's a great marketer, I don't know if you know him, called Seth Godin.
Yes.
He's brilliant. If you want to know about creating USPs, I read Purple Cow a long time ago. Read it, because he's a great marketer. He's a great educator. And that idea of creating that USP, that reason why you're distinctive, you're different from the rest of the sea of noise that we have on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on TikTok, on any sort of social media, even to an extent podcasting as well, because You want to create yourself as a thought leader. It sounds that's what you're trying to create yourself as. And therefore that book, I'm sure, will give you an amazing insight that hopefully might be able to help you with your marketing.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Right. This is something that I've struggled with my current business. So I do real estate and I own properties and I rent properties out, and it's easy. My exit plan for that is death, and I'll pass the properties on to my children. It's simple. I worked that out quite easy. That was what I was going to do.
You already know it's one of the 5G.
So this podcast agency, which me and my business partner has been running for 2.5 years, I've struggled with the idea of the exit plan. And I've come to the conclusion that I want to get to the point where everything is automated and it can almost run on its own, and I'm strategic and directing where the business goes and stuff like that. So I have thought about that recently. But how do you help your clients who want to grow their business, but also think about their exit strategy as well?
Well, actually, what's really cool about exit planning is that exit planning really is just great business strategy. Because what exit planning does, if it's done well, is it allows you to grow value while preparing your business for exit. And that's why the sooner you start, the better. So you talking about your podcast business, for example, one of the things that gets people at the end that wait until the very last minute to decide that they want to exit their business, and then they think it's going to be worth X amount of dollars, and it turns out it's really just worth the stuff they have. Yeah. Is that they are the center of the business. So to your point, you're already thinking about all the right things. It's that idea of decentralizing yourself and as the business owner, and removing yourself from being the most important, most responsible, most reliable person in the room, surrounding yourself with a team of great people, putting in place systems and processes, making sure that everybody's talking the same language. And I think what happens sometimes is that there are a couple different pieces of it. You can have a succession plan where you're planning to pass it along to someone else, and that's one level of preparation. But an even better level of preparation for a business like yours is the idea of creating this great brand. And then the brand is what you're selling. That is a much more valuable, if done well, can be a much more valuable proposition than just, well, I'm going to sell it to my successor, or I'm going to pass it along to someone in my organization, or so on. So there are different paths to an exit, and you're already thinking about it. I think where you're ahead of the game, I wish that everybody who was starting a business was already thinking about the fact that at some point they're going to exit it, whether they want to or not, right? You joked about death. That was your exit plan. But there are a bunch of things that could force you out of your business, like disability, divorce, like all sorts of things that can happen. So pretending that you're not going to leave your business at some point. Plus, the other thing is, a lot of people who start up businesses are serial entrepreneurs, right? They want to get on to the next thing. Like, oh, well, I'm going to grow this and then I want to move it. So the beauty about exit planning is the things that you do to prepare for an exit are just really good for your business, and they make your business more fun to run, because it does remove you from the center of the business so you can be working on a much higher level, which is where you should have been anyway, because you own the business. You're supposed to be strategic and holistic, 30,000-foot view, but often we're so wrapped up in doing the day-to-day nitty-gritty stuff, we're not doing that anymore. So by mitigating risk and by looking at ways that you can grow, do you need to add more product lines or more service offerings? Do you want to acquire other businesses and grow that way? There are so many ways that you can grow. And as long as you're being mindful of the end goal, then all of those can support each other and make the business a lot more fun. That's the thing that I get excited about. Is I often have business owners that I work with who are not enjoying their business anymore. And they're like, I just want to get out. But then when they realize that they can do all these things to make their business run the way it should be running, and it makes it more valuable, then it's fun again.
Why do entrepreneurs, business owners create themselves as a bottleneck? Whether they're part of the sales team, whether they're part of the marketing, whether they're operations, something that a lot of smaller businesses anyway struggle with, that they are the bottleneck because they think they're the best people to do that. When you see that with your clients, or when you're working with people and you see that happening, How do you help educate the entrepreneur, the business owner, about that they are actually stopping their business being able to grow?
Interestingly, that is often the biggest challenge, is changing that mindset and reframing that. And you touched on it, partly it's ego. As as business owners, especially if we started the thing, like we're the founder, we have that whole founder's mindset. We're the only one that really understands our vision. We're the only one who really gets it. Well, whose fault is that? If that's really the case, then whose fault is that? That's your fault, because you haven't communicated it to the rest of your team. And the thing is that most business owners are smart people. And once they realize that a lot of times they don't even realize they're the bottleneck. They don't get it until you demonstrate it for them. And often it's also fear. It's fear. Well, what if I'm not the most important person in the room? Like, what if the business doesn't really need me? And getting past that idea that the business is not your identity. You have a role in the business, but you don't want the business to be your whole identity, right? Because there should be a lot more parts to you that are important. Like for you, you've got your kids, your family, and you have all these other things that you do. They're just different hats that we wear. And if we can get in the habit of trying on different hats and different roles, then we can start to separate. I'm getting really woo now, but we can start to separate our identity from our role. And that's when the magic happens.
So what you're saying, it's making me think of Richard Branson, and he is the art of delegating to other people.
Yes,
And
he's brilliant, right?
I don't know how many businesses,
brilliant.
it's like 100 of them that he's got in the Virgin brand. But he says he surrounds himself with the best people that are more intelligent than him.
Smarter than you. Yes, exactly. And that's really the key. The thing is, you can't have so much ego that you're not prepared to surround yourself with people who are way smarter than you.
You have to drop that ego, don't you?
You got to drop the ego. No ego, amigo. The ego's got to go, because it is the thing. Because if you can't believe that other people can do things as well or better than you, even if they do it differently, this is the thing. I struggled a long time because I think most of us as business owners are control freaks. I struggled for a long time with delegation. And then I realized that the reason why I failed at delegation was I wanted to tell people what I wanted them to do, how I wanted them to do it, and when I wanted it done. I wanted to control the entire process because I just felt like that was the only way it was going to come out at the same level. Well, first of all, it doesn't always need to be the same over the top level that I might be inclined to do. But second of all, you need to give people the opportunity to come up with their own way. Now that I've learned the art of delegation, and now it's like the challenge. Who can I find that can do this instead of me? Because I know that almost anybody out there can do it better than me, but who can I find that can do this instead of me? And now, if it doesn't make me happy, if it doesn't make me excited, then I look for someone else who can do that for me, especially if it's something where I'm spending time doing something that I could pay someone else less than I get paid to do the thing. I was doing a lot of stuff before that. I could have paid someone a lot less and had a lot more time. Even if I wasn't billing more at the time, I could have had a lot more time to think strategically and make better choices and have some energy in reserve, have some energy left over.
So you're a consultant, you're a business strategist, you're an exit planner. And this is a deliberately blunt question, so please do apologize if you go, but is your business that you have currently scalable?
That's a great question. I have, in its current iteration, the way I'm doing it right now, it is not scalable. And that's partly by design. I thought about the exit. For me, this is more of a lifestyle business right now, because what I want right now is I want to work with clients I really enjoy. I'm at a stage of my life and a position in my career where I've chosen that at this moment in time, now a few years from now, I'll probably feel differently. But right now I'm at a place where I just want to work with people that have a real bias toward action, and I really want to help them move the needle. And I'm not looking for a huge scale at this moment in time. Now I'm very, what's the word? I'm wired to overachieve. And so I think that will change over time, but I wanted to have some time while my daughter's still at home. My son just went off to college. I've intentionally made it so that at this point in time, I'm not trying to break any world records, which is hard for me. But I do have a framework, and I have a way that I work with people. And so over time, I may decide that I want to remove myself from the center of my business, more so than I already have, and scale it at that point.
So earlier on in this conversation, you talked about your aptitude to be able to adapt and change to the market, to your life, and how you want to conduct it. How do you think you approach change and embracing change? Because it's something that we all face.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we had this thing called the pandemic, and that made a lot of businesses have to, like, the word pivot became the buzzword within the whole, any industry you were talking about. It was all about, we all had to pivot to something else.
Yeah.
How do you approach change, and how do you embrace change?
So I approach change a lot differently now than I did 10 years ago. I used to go into our business and I'd be all excited about something. And I realized that most people find change really scary. And I think because I'm so adaptable, for me, it's just a new challenge. And that's how I take it on. So for me, myself, when I face a transition, I just look at it as an opportunity. I drive my kids crazy. I say, there are no problems, only solutions. Like, let's go figure out what the solution is. And I worked with someone when I changed from being a business owner who had a practice and was a veterinarian, I was a doctor and all the things, and I switched into something completely different where I was starting from scratch. That transition was surprisingly hard for me. That one kind of hit me because I struggled. This is why I talk about identity versus role. I struggled with my identity. I'm like, oh, like, who am I? Who am I? Who's my mother? I really did. I went through that whole phase, like, wait, who am I? You go out for dinner with people and they're like, oh, well, what do you do? I'm like, yeah, not really sure right now, which I'd never had in my entire life. But it was really good for me because it made me realize that as good as I am at transition, change and transition can be tough. First of all, you want to make sure that when you make a decision about a change, when you choose to change, different from pivoting because you have to, that you're running towards something and not running away. And because those little tiny shifts matter, because if you're just running away from something, the grass is always greener on the other side. Mm-hmm. So when you make those kind of decisions, be really sure that you're running towards something that you really want, not just running away from a pain. That would be number one about how I look at change now. But also, it's also the fact that not everybody manages change the way that I do. And so my biggest challenge used to be, I'd go in and be like, hey, let's do this thing. It's going to be amazing. I've got these great ideas. And I'd come in like a bull in the china shop and they'd be like, what are you smoking? Like, no, I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of that. So I really had to learn how to adjust my approach depending on who you're dealing with. And so I deal with that a lot with my clients. Change is hard. And you have to make sure that people understand the why behind the change and that everybody's wrapped their head around it. So for me personally, man, that transition, that was a bear. It was a struggle.
My transition from a corporate role into business owner, it's something that I hadn't realized. So I worked in corporate for 12 years. This was 4 years ago. And probably, I don't know, 10 or 11 years ago, I started on this self-development journey. Everyone touches the base of Tony Robbins. I think everyone starts there. They often move on from there, but they start there.
They start there, sure. We've all been there. Yeah.
So I listened to podcasts, I listened to audiobooks, got obsessed about understanding mindset and understanding productivity and understanding.
Me too. Same path. Yeah.
And then it was entrepreneurship that I started to get obsessed with. So the actual transition, I think the transition from being a corporate employee where you have a salary to entrepreneurship where everything's on you was actually easier for me than necessarily my wife, because my wife was like, she wasn't part of the journey listening to the podcasts and the audiobooks and understanding what I was thinking about. So
She
all
had the
about,
mindset. She didn't have the growth mindset.
no, she hadn't, and she wasn't in that headspace. And I was
And it's
talking
a
to her
lot.
about it.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. But structurally, how do you change from, and I can share some of my experiences, but how do you change from that element of security and safety, and you know where the next pay packet's coming in, to the sort of fear of, when is the next client coming in, and they're going to pay in 30 days, and I'm not going to have a salary for this, or I'm going to reinvest my salary into the business to grow the business. How did you deal with that fear factor of you're not necessarily knowing where the next pay packet's coming in?
That's a really great point. And that's something that I had to work on a lot, was, again, the mindset of coming from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. So really, a lot of what we think affects how we behave. It affects how we feel. Like, it's just physiology, right? So I have gotten very good at focusing on what I'm telling myself, what I write down, and really framing it for my brain that this is what's going to happen. Now, that said, you still have to be practical, right? Like, at the end of the day, you got to make sure the money is coming in. And there is a totally different feeling, as I'm sure, between having that weekly, biweekly, whatever paycheck coming in. And even if you're living off of your nest egg or your investments or whatever, it is not the same feeling as having that money coming from outside at all. And that's one of the things that I talk to people about, even when they're exiting their business, because even when you sell your business, having sold my business, and you get like a chunk of money, it still is not the same as having that money flowing in all the time and feeling like you don't have to worry about it, other than as long as you do the thing, it's going to show up. So I would say that, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, that is where all that growth mindset and the mindset work is what kept me afloat. Because otherwise, I think I probably would have crawled under a rock and maybe just gone back and gotten a job.
Yeah.
Because I could have gone and gotten a corporate job and done the thing. And in a lot of ways, it might have been a lot easier.
100% easier, probably not as much fun.
Not nearly as much fun. And I joke, but it would have been easier.
Yeah.
But I think that most of us who get into this sort of a journey, we don't do it because it's easy, right?
No.
We do it because it's a challenge and it's interesting, and we get to have influence over the outcome. We get to have a say. So, but that is not for nothing. I still spend time on my mindset all the time. Like, I love that you said it's really interesting, that journey, isn't it? Of the mindset stuff and the productivity, it all really goes hand in hand. And what's interesting is, I think people like us who have spent a lot of time in that space and we're constantly, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly consuming more and more of that stuff, because it always ups my game. We don't realize that not everybody's doing that. To your point about your wife, right? Like, it's hard because you're not necessarily bringing other people along on the journey. So you're in this place where you're like, yeah, this is good. I've got this. Don't worry about it. And they're like, you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
What do you mean you got this? Like,
it's a very similar conversation.
There's nothing going on. Like, you have no money coming in. You have no, like, what do you mean you've got this? And you're just like, oh yeah, I got this. Totally got this.
I know the number of time I've sort of said it's fine. It'll be fine. Like, this is here. This is happening. This is going to happen. It's all going to be fine.
It just takes time. Yeah.
Exactly. Patience is what you need, and it's a very. I'm glad I've connected with you on that, because it's been a big trigger for me, because it's just like, I know it's going to work. I know it is working. I know where the money's coming in, what we need to do. But for her, it was like, but that was my security.
Yes.
That was, and the other thing pandemic, I was a little bit, but working from home and being around all the time, that was a readjustment for my wife as well.
Oh,
now we love it. Now we love the fact that we're around for our kids, both around for our kids. We love the fact that we have lunch together every day.
Yeah.
But
in the beginning, it's really weird, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was never home. Like, I'd leave in the dark. I'd come home in the dark a lot of the time, 6-7 days a week. Like, And then all of a sudden, and we have a smaller home because we have more outdoor space. And it was really an adjustment. It was really just at first, my husband was like, oh, it'd be great to have you around. And then he's like, I have a routine, you know?
Yeah.
I have a routine. This is my routine. You need to figure this out.
I know
But I think that
really...
to your point, though, the other thing is this idea of us connecting on this is that entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey, because there's a lot of this feeling that you have to fake it until you make it. And so there's a lot of this idea that you're putting yourself out there and pretending like things are going great when inside you're like, oh. And so I think it's hard. It's hard for people to understand that, listen, we're all on the same journey in all of this. And not everybody hits it out of the park the first time. Like sometimes you throw an idea out there and it doesn't work at all. And you have to rework it. And that's just part of the journey. That's why I really encourage people to create like a personal board of directors. Right. So people love to help other people. They really do, especially people who've been really successful. So if you can surround yourself with 5 or so people who are willing to, like, you can take them out for a coffee once a month, or you can call them on the phone once in a while and just get their perspective, and preferably people who are doing things either that are at a much higher level that you want to do, or they're doing something completely different. Yeah. And they can give you an outsider's perspective, because often we get so caught up in our little microcosm of existence, whomever we are connecting with all the time, that we miss out because there's something really obvious that we could have tried. Yeah. And we didn't even think about it because we've surrounded ourselves with the same people doing the same systems and the same stuff.
So I think personally, networking groups, masterminds, mentors, coaches, business partners, you need to surround yourself with good people that are going through something similar. Yeah. And that's where you start being able to develop that. And I this whole idea, something that you haven't mentioned, but I think you've inferred right at the start with exit planning. People are part of communities as well as families and things like that. And I think it is super important that entrepreneurs and everyone who's listening on this show today, that is an entrepreneur that find themselves isolated or on their own, there are people out there, coaches, mentors, masterminds, networking groups, whatever works for you. You need to find those people that can support you, as you say, give you advice, or just spitball an idea and get an idea of where they're going or where they've already been. They are so important, because it can be very lonely being the sole owner of a business and you don't have anyone to talk to.
Yes. And I love that point, because you're right. Building your community is the key. Because otherwise, first of all, they can accelerate your growth and your progress, but more importantly, they can support you. They can give you moral support. It always helps, especially when you hit those lulls or those dips. It always helps to have someone who can say, "Hey, look, I was there. You just plow on, just pick something, do something, take some action." Yeah. And just having someone who can say, yeah, I know, I get it, or just validating the fact that you're stressed out about it, or you're worried about it, just validating it and saying, yep, you're right. I see why that's upsetting. And then give you a kick in the butt so you move on. That's the other thing, is having a great accountability partner. I have an awesome accountability partner right now. I have a couple, but I have one in particular. And if I'm really struggling with whatever, I'll just text her and go, hey, and she'll be like, yeah, I get it. And then she'll be like, okay, now go do this, report back. And it matters. Like, no matter what level you're at, I don't care if you're running a $10 million company, $100 million company. These are like basic ideas that will support you throughout your growth.
Awesome. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. The first question that I want to ask you is, what's the best decision that you've made?
Best decision I've made, ever? Like, ever I can think of? Having kids. My career was so busy, I wasn't sure I wanted to have kids. I didn't know that I had space for it. Best thing I ever did. What's
the best piece of advice you've been given?
Best piece of advice I've been given. That's hard. I've been given a lot of good advice, but I would say that it comes to mind right now is the idea of thinking time, setting aside an hour a week to just think about possibilities, not try to solve problems, but just be in a possibility mindset and think of all the possibilities. That's probably the best piece of advice I've gotten.
Amazing. Who's helped you most in your career?
Wow. I would say my dad. My dad has always been supportive of whatever I decided to do, but he's also always been very straightforward about like what makes a good business, what doesn't. And I often hear his voice in my head, or I'll call him, go, hey, what about this? And I'll be like, yeah, no, that's a really bad idea. We have conversations about my current business model all the time because he's like, yeah, that's not a good business. Not scalable.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked you the question about scalability.
I know, that's why it's funny, right? That's why it's funny.
Tell me about a regret that you have.
I regret not realizing sooner that I had choices. And it sounds dumb. Like, I'm a pretty smart person, but I spent a lot of my life thinking that where I was and what I was doing it just was what it was. And I just needed to suck it up and live with it. And that was a theme I had in my life for a while. When I started to learn that I could make, it sounds silly, but that I could make choices. Some of them might suck, like they might be awful, but that I always have a choice. Just realizing that I had that agency changed my life.
What are you most proud of? And you can't say your kids. You've already answered the kids before.
I already used the kids. I'm most proud of? I'd say I'm most proud of the fact that I have now learned I haven't mastered it entirely. It's a constant work in progress, but I've learned how to live a more full life. I still love business. I love work. I love all of that, but I've learned how to live a more full life. And that's what I'm most proud of, because that's what I want my kids and my family to remember me for.
Oh, we've gotten on to that. What does legacy mean to you?
Oh, so legacy means something different to me now than I think I thought it would. Legacy to me now means what experiences and beliefs and ideas will I have imparted to my kids and my family and my friends if I leave them behind? What will I have imparted? Like, what will they remember about what was important?
I think that's
like values and
we
all
are looking for that. We're all looking for that.
Yeah.
And lastly, if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Oh, okay. That one's easy. Easiest place is productivepressure.com. That's my website. I'm also, as I said, hanging out on LinkedIn quite a bit. I post on some other platforms, but I really mostly engage on LinkedIn. And I always love meeting new people. So whether or not I can do anything to help you, if you just want to hang out and have a fun conversation, look me up.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dawn. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I feel we've connected. We're kindred spirits. We were both in a sort of corporate environment and then moved to entrepreneurship. So thank you so much. It's been such an enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. I've had a great time. I appreciate you.
What an interesting interview I had with Dawn. I really feel like we're kindred spirits here. She talked about being a vet for a number of years, being in a business, an established business, growing that, acquiring in a business, and then, which I did in a corporate environment, and then leaving and becoming an entrepreneur. And I just thought it was fascinating talking to her and understanding her journey. And we've both been through that sort of self-development journey of the books, Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk and all those people, that influencers that are out there producing content and courses and things. And I thought it was really interesting, really hearing her idea and her struggles with things like social media and marketing, generally about marketing that she was struggling with. So it's one of those that as a consultant and probably as a vet as well, she probably never thought marketing was that important. But as we all know, as business owners and entrepreneurs, marketing and sales are the most important part of your business. You must know that by now. You've been listening to this show enough to know that sales and marketing is so critical to business owners being able to grow. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that my direct, blunt question about, is a business scalable? And she said, no, not at this present form. And she's enjoying the lifestyle entrepreneurship lifestyle that she's got at the moment that works for her, which not everyone wants to be an empire builder. And I get that, and I totally respect that as a view on entrepreneurship. But I wonder if she'll come around and start maybe pushing that business maybe in a few years' time. But yeah, absolutely loved that interview. I thought she was a great lady, a great experience that she had. And hopefully as a listener and a watcher, you've enjoyed that rapport that I really felt that we had together. And I thought that she was just a great person, and she was doing a model which worked for her. And every entrepreneur is slightly different. We all have different constraints, different pressures, different dependents, different priorities. So we all have to be understanding of different prioritizations that we all have. And yeah, great interview. Absolutely loved my time with her. I thought she was a great guest. I get a really good viewpoint on entrepreneurship, business growth, being a consultant. That whole idea of exit planning, I think, is super important, something I didn't initially think of, but I think it is important that you have an idea of how you're going to not be the bottleneck and how you're going to delegate and essentially at some point exit, whether it is by death, which is what I suggested with my properties, or whether you're selling a business or passing the business on to someone else. So thanks, Dawn. I really appreciated your time. It was super interesting. Had a great time spending time with you today, and on to the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.